Yes, hello, folks. Welcome to the weekly Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, as always, Phil Brand, joined with my regular co-host, the excellent James Rhodes. Jamesy, how you doing, mate?
I'm doing pretty well today, and you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Of course, United drew one each yesterday against Bournemouth. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about lots of other stuff making the headlines around the football club. Some changes in the scouting department. Of course, some controversy over Rasmus Hoyland's post, and some transfer news that
Mhm.
starting to gather pace, which it looks like United are going to start making moves early in this market, which is very encouraging. First of all, mate, how was your weekend?
Good, good. It's here in Colorado. You never know what you're gonna get, but we had a
Mm.
nice, warm couple of days. Actually, stayed warm. The last time it did that, it snowed the next day. That was like a week ago. So it was nice. Coached my son's team out there again. So I had a lot of fun with all of that.
Yeah, it's funny because on Saturday I was at my daughter's game,
Yeah.
and it's the first game I've ever experienced in 20 years in California of playing in the rain.
Mm,
And because it started
okay.
right before the game started. If
Yeah.
it had started like 20 minutes before, then it
Call it off,
called it
right?
immediately.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so we had reverse weather this weekend, mate. We had a cold, but
Rare rain in
I really
California.
enjoyed it.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
really enjoyed it. It's when I was a kid growing up in Ireland, like if you didn't play in the rain, you didn't play at all. And I
I
loved
missed that
playing
too.
in the
I
rain. I
loved
loved
that.
it, especially
Yeah.
the forward ball would skid off the ground, and
Yeah.
my daughter scored a couple of goals, and it was everyone on the sideline, freezing. I'm like, it's just back to
I
40 weather. I'm like a penguin in the Arctic, back in my natural habitat. Look at this.
love it.
So it was nice. But anyway, Manchester United this weekend, 1-8 against Bournemouth. Give me your thoughts on the game.
Similar to how it's always been recently, right? In a lot of ways. First, I just want to touch on the refereeing a little bit because
Mm.
you once again get this scenario where I think that they should have had two players sent off. First tackle that came in was worse, I think, than the second one. And I was saying when I was watching it, that's a Casemiro red, but it's everybody else a yellow.
Yeah.
It's a tackle we'll see time and time again get called as a red card. Patrick Dorgu got a similar red early on, goes through the ball, but is reaching a bit out of control in like a
Mm.
second, right? And gets a red, goes through the ball and gets studs into the leg. So I thought it was, I guess the part that bothers me because I don't particularly care that we didn't get two red cards, but the part that gets obnoxious is then you get all this dramaticness from media and things as soon as United get one call in their favor. That's as if it was awful that they got it so wrong, all of these and everything. But that's just again, we didn't learn anything new. That's always how it is with United. That's how the media talk about it. That's how they all do it. And so fair enough. But otherwise, same as usual. I thought from about 30 minutes on, United were better, not great, but better than the opposition. Um, when they went up, later on, they got a lot of chances. Again, second week in a row, one shot on target for the opposition, one goal.
Yeah.
um, that came a bit off a mistake as well, out the back. But same kind of story. I mean, each week, conceding one shot, one goal, and hitting 15 shots and getting one or
Mm.
zero is kind of the story we're seeing over and over again. So nothing particularly new that we learned versus usual. I mean,
Yeah, look, for me, a couple of things. With the sendings off, the red card for Evan Nicholson, and of course, the one that was on Garnacho, I forget the last name that went in on him. Um,
Tyler Adams was right, American.
was it Tyler Adams?
Yeah, I believe
Uh,
it was, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
but I would agree in that Evan Nielsen does slip. You can see that, right?
Yep.
And it's not the worst red card in the world, but there's no intent. That doesn't necessarily mean you won't get sent off. But
Correct. Correct.
I can
Yeah.
sort of see there was an accident. For me, the one on Garnacho, Adams does go for the ball, same as Tyler Adams, but he follows through. And that's very dangerous because you
Mhm.
play football, you can get the ball, follow through, and make
Yep.
sure you get it. It's
You know what you're doing,
not a
yeah.
complex skill. It's
Yep.
it's something that's utilized at all levels of football. And I was a bit surprised. It felt like after that there was a times he was made mistakes and then constantly trying to correct them by getting the next decision wrong by
Yeah,
compensating the
yeah,
referee.
yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, understandably, yeah.
And
Human thing.
I can't remember exactly who it was, if it was Garnacho. But I also felt that there was a penalty in there that should have had in that game.
Maguire, I thought.
Maguire, the guy
Yeah,
comes by,
yeah,
that's a penalty. I mean,
yeah,
he was it Lewis Cook? He goes by, grabs him.
yeah.
I
The
can't.
same, we've seen that
It
call
doesn't get
against us. I
shown.
think that's the one Hoyland got bringing down Diaz last year or something like that.
Well,
Very,
it
very
reminded me a
similar.
bit of one that Hoyland didn't get at Arsenal.
Yes, yes,
And then
yes.
City at Old Trafford, Hoyland
Yep,
just touches
yep.
Rodri, jumps on the ground,
Rodri, yeah, yeah.
immediate, penalty,
It's that
and
grab around the
Paul, I
waist
think it
when
was
they're
like
running
Paul
by.
Hinkin.
Yeah.
What's that?
That grab around the waist as they run by, right? Like
Yeah.
to pull them down. Yeah.
And who was the Europa League game? He got a penalty given them against, and there was barely any contact at all. I think it was the last round, was it?
Was it Sociedad? Because there was a bunch of penalties in
I
that
know
one. Yeah,
that.
so
Yes, my short
yeah.
term. My man is just. I swear to God, like I'm sitting having conversations with people, and I'm starting to forget what I'm talking about in the middle of them. And it's just so.
Yeah.
Even like driving, I'm like, is that like green or? I don't know what is going on in my brain. Seriously, like this is. I don't know. But I'm watching this, and I'm going. Remember when United scored, where the free kick, the wall was just a little bit too far back,
Hmm.
when Flanders over the wall. Sky Sports get a whole team of people, doing a walk and everything, What?
They've got the
All right,
tape
what are you going to do next?
measure.
Get a Ouija board out, or have a seance and start contacting Abe Lincoln to see what he thinks about this decision. I mean,
Yeah.
it's embarrassing. But here's what I don't understand, James. Right? Are the people that like have a deep-seated resentment towards United not bored of this now?
You
Like
think so,
United
right?
are sitting in 15th. Why are they still in your head that much?
Yeah.
Is beating them still that much, of a high, that much of a scalp? Is because Liverpool had this relentless period of success,
Hmm.
but they never experienced any, media consequences as a result of that. There
Correct.
wasn't this, afterwards they were still the darling. They're still celebrated. You know, Today is, this is the best sunshine ever in the history of the world in Anfield today. This is the best footballer that ever lived. This is the best baker that ever lived. This is the best tech. I mean, everything with them
Hmm.
is the fucking best that ever lived. Like nothing can just be good. It has
Yeah.
to be the best. But that's okay. That's what fans do, right? But to see the media participate in this bullshit,
Hmm.
is like,
Yep.
I'll never forget. This is the insanity we're talking about. Ollie Holt, I'm certain, the only fucker in the whole of humanity that made this connection. Jared Kwanzaa's performance against United in the FA Cup was Keenesque in Turin. Like, I mean, it's not even fair on Kwanzaa. I'm like, I wouldn't have wrote this article if I was Jared Kwanzaa's brother on 20 pounds of heroin. It's such bullshit. It's embarrassing. And then United, any issue whatsoever, it's just scrutinized. I mean, how long did we see the Onana, Victor Woods?
Yep.
Remember, started last season.
Affected the whole season, I think, in terms of how they officiated us.
The first 3-4 months with every refereeing decision.
Yep.
It did not go. And there were so many. We were like, this is ridiculous.
Yep.
I'm certain of the fact that the Arsenal game, everything away, right? It was a consequence of that. And, it is interesting to me that when United play in Europe, they get penalties.
Yeah, we got a lot.
They get the sending off Tolisso. Like, I don't think it was a sending off, but there's no way it happens in the Premier League. There's no way.
100%. And then the penalty and the extra, no way are they calling that.
Yeah.
They're just gonna let it go and not see it.
Exactly.
Yep.
Rasmus Højlund took some shit. Sorry for the language of the cut, right? For his post after the game. I was actually about to respond to your tweet, and I'm glad I didn't because I realized I was wrong. I was going to say I don't think he posted; it was probably his team. But then I heard Laurie Whitwell on Talk of the Devil saying that it is him posting. Oops,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
and that he has his phone in the changing room. One, I don't understand how you
I
never allow
hate
that.
that. I hate that for, and it's nothing to do with him. It's as a rule. I don't
James,
understand it. You wouldn't get away with it in high school in the US in sports. It's so unbelievable that it's even allowed. I don't get it. I really don't.
yeah, I don't get that. They and beyond that, James, there are so many times where I've looked back on tweets that I've sent immediately after games where I'll cringe even half an hour
Yeah.
later going,
Yeah.
because your adrenaline's going, you're emotional, you're still feeling it. And then when your
Yep.
emotions settle down, you look at it in a more logical way, you have different conclusions that
Yep.
are almost always the correct ones.
Yeah.
And I'm going, Ruben Amorim said he has a rule that he doesn't react immediately after games. He tries to leave it to the next day. Now, every human being, can't keep that
Yeah.
rule perfectly. But surely it's for the same reason. Like, take his
Yeah.
phone away.
Yeah.
Second, I don't think it was that bad. I'll be honest. Right? Now, let me just say something that strikers won't want to admit. But anyone that's been a striker will know exactly what I mean here. You can play a game and say you draw 2-2 and you don't score a goal. Or you play the next game and you lose 5-2, but you score 2. That striker is leaving the field happier at the
Oh, yeah.
5-2 because
Yeah.
he did his job or she
So
did
don't
their
tell
job.
anybody that,
No, so Rasmus Højlund is happy that he scored a goal in the 96th minute.
Correct.
I don't want to, not the result we wanted post. So what? Yeah. Why is that such a bad thing? Yeah, United should be beating Bournemouth. Yeah, they should have scored more goals. All of that.
Yep.
But there's a couple of things, James, that it's really nasty in society. There's this concept that if you're not suffering, then you are, you are
Yeah.
not
I know
paying
what you're
correct
saying. Yeah.
penance,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So suffering, if you're not suffering in your job, you're lazy. If you're not suffering in
Yep.
your life, you're a loser. All this, right? So what we have seen is mental health is absolutely vital to any human being in your life, my life. If you want to perform, you have a bad day at work, do not go home and stare at a wall because that's
Yeah.
going to increase the likelihood that you're going to have another bad day at work. So you have to come home. You have to do things in your life, your personal life or whatever, and have happiness and have some sense of celebration and meaning. I mean, we see this with the reaction to Marcus Rashford going to boxing or whatever. You need to stay home and stare at a wall.
Yeah, you're
I mean,
injured, so you
what do you
can't
want
go
these
like to
people
a
to do?
boxing match or something.
Yeah, like
It's weird.
yeah, they're just so emotionally committed to just piling on these people. No matter how many times we hear a story, like footballers or any athlete telling you the struggle, the mental struggle, this goes on, that goes on. I'm listening to an interview the other day with Stephen Fulton, who's a boxer, talking about as soon as I made money, because when I was in my last fight, I got dropped by a brilliant fighter anyway. His mother texts his sister and goes, "Well, there goes my house."
Yeah.
And that broke his heart.
Yeah.
He goes, "I've 143 grand this year alone from Cash App transfers to my family that are all fighting." And he's like, now there's no more peace around me. It's just like vultures coming. And now I'm no longer their son, their brother. I'm just a human being that's there to make big money.
Yep.
Imagine what that does to a human being.
Yep.
I can understand kids reacting this way, James, but people our age who know better, I think that the reaction to it was over the top.
I think my main concern, which I mentioned in tweet there, and it's applied to a few others because it's not the first time I've said it this season, is the immediate aftermath of a game. Because two factors in this. Number one, I don't think that the phone should be in a dressing room in general. I think
Right.
Pep Guardiola's banned them from the training ground and the dressing rooms, right? And I think he's done that for a reason. And there's a simple causality to this because the tweet itself, it means very little to me. When Manuel Ugarte, or the post, when Manuel Ugarte scored his first goal for United, he made a post. United lost that game or drew. I
Yeah.
think it wasn't right afterwards, however. I believe it was the next day, and it was probably his media team based on how it was put together. When Marcus Rashford scored his 100th goal or something like that for United, I think it was in a draw. Maybe it was. I can't recall. There was a post about it. Again, it was a bit later on, not immediately afterwards,
Mhm.
because the way I think about it is this: you come into the dressing room from a game. I want you as a player, and I know this as a person who's been in dressing rooms, who's been a part of a team. I don't want anybody sitting and going into their phone in the immediate aftermath of a game and looking
Mhm.
at social media and
Mhm.
going through all of
I
that. I
agree
think it's
with that.
incredibly unhealthy. And I think it's a really bad. I want you to talk with your teammates. I want you to fight. I want you to argue. I want you to figure things out. I want you to get into it, to start
Mhm.
whatever it may
Yeah.
be. That's what a team is. If everybody's going into their dressing room and going in their separate ways and sitting on their phones and not talking to each other, I mean, it's the same thing. You sit down to dinner with your family. If everybody's doing that all the time, there's no conversation happening. Nothing is
No,
being
Tim.
gained. Nothing is being,
Mhm.
garnered from that. That worry, that's the part that bothers me. I don't, there's not I worry about that a lot with United, that there's such a lack of camaraderie, a lack of a team there. And it's not all on one person, but this is the type of thing to me that looks like a symptom of that problem.
Mhm.
After a tough game, you know, get
Yeah.
together, talk, work it out, discuss. I know it's corny. You watch like Arsenal do their, NFL style huddle ups on the pitch and things like that. But so what if it works? If it builds a team, so what if it helps them to be more together and to be more successful? That's what I'd like to see more than anything. That's the part
Mhm.
that bothers me a lot. It speaks to, and I think it does have an effect on the players, on how they play. They look, just as an example, in this, Garnacho and Hoyland, we know this as a stat, have combined for 1 goal in their
Mhm.
entire time playing together. It's not an
Yeah.
accident that stuff happens. It does speak to a disconnectedness
Sure.
between people, and that is something that worries me in general.
Yeah, obviously, we're in a different position, so
Yeah.
our perspective is different. I think
Hmm.
there's a couple of things we have to allow for. One,
Yeah.
human error. Two, they're young men, right?
Yep.
I'm 48 years of age, and I'm still learning the lesson of don't post on the internet when you're emotional, right?
Yeah.
Like that I've tried really hard to not even tweet during games or like in
Yeah.
the immediate they just
Oh
think
yeah.
about this and
I get
then
it.
because the better take always happens later,
Hmm.
right? And but I've broken that rule 1,000 times trying to get it right. And there are so many things that if someone brought it to my attention that were in my tweet history where I would just cringe to death over stupid opinions or harsh words that I've said about players, or like there's just so much of it that I don't want to own. So
Yeah.
kids make these young men make mistakes, but to me, that's a preventable mistake because it's such an obvious thing. Do
Yeah.
not access social media after the game. Like
Yep.
if I'm Hoyland's team, I'm changing his passwords to his social media and not giving him.
Yeah.
No, seriously, for
Yeah.
two reasons. For that reason, but also social media is an absolute death trap for athletes.
Yes. Yes.
If you use it yourself, but remember, they're still human beings. They're seeing people leveling abuse, all types of things at them. Eventually, you're going to respond. You're going to bite because that's
Yep.
just normal. And that's why they have teams run it, because it would be annihilating to their mental health to read
Yep.
all that negativity every single day and not respond at least once or twice. So it's a death trap for athletes. And because there's like a club like United where there's such broad diversity of viewpoint, whatever you post, you're going to get a positive and negative reaction. He
Yep.
posted something on Thursday on his Instagram and it was celebrated. And it was a bit of a humorous comment, like, getting to the semi is,
Yeah.
nice when you have a semi, when you get to a semi or
Gives
something,
me a
it's funny.
semi or
Nobody,
something like
nobody said
that.
anything. That was
Yeah. Yeah.
don't tell, but it was immediate aftermath. That should have been the moment right there where Ruben Amorim was like, give me those phones.
Mm. Yeah.
That's not
Yep.
happening.
Yeah, I agree. It's a team issue, it's a policy issue for me, that something that has to be addressed. that I think they have to realize sooner rather than later. I also think, unfortunately, it's a bit of a holdover from what we know, right? Which was the commodization of the players at United.
Yeah, and that's been
You know,
encouraged.
encouraging them to be the brand. Like we would see players join United and they get their social set up for them, and then they're there posting after games and posting there, and it's like, it is what it is in that respect. So I hope it's something that changes because I don't think it's good. And it is. It's like, I don't want to blame on this, but like, it's the exact moment. As fans, we're also emotional in the aftermath of the game. And so,
Mm-hmm.
even for a player, if you want to post something, just wait till the next day and post it.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the immediate aftermath, we're gonna be very emotional too, and react and be angry about it, and that's going to stick with you. You lose or have a tough game and somebody says something, you don't really want to hear it at that point in time, and it's going to make someone a target of ire. So just something I definitely hope changes, because it's not the content of it that bothers me. It's the timing. It's what it speaks to, the
Yeah,
timing of those
I
things.
mean, geez, if you go back to January, you remember the controversy over Garnacho social media. In fact, I think there was a couple of accounts that had tweeted out about, some completely nebulous, but certainly some links between, aggregate accounts and certain things with
Yeah,
Garnacho's
yeah.
brother. Now, he hadn't tweeted since January 12th, I think, which
Yeah,
I
I think
thought
he
was
deleted it
coincidental.
at that time. Yeah.
And his brother was then caught liking a post that was talking up Garnacho's move to Chelsea.
Hmm.
These are the things that United have to manage better,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's such an obvious. Roberto Garnacho is a young kid too,
Yep.
right? It's such an obvious, to me, booby trap.
Hmm.
Like that to me is essentially growing weeds that you're going to have to pull.
Yep.
Why do this? Why not just sit? I mean, first of all, Alejandro should be sitting down going, "This is my
Yeah.
career, and
Yeah.
anyone who signs me next isn't going to allow this.
Yep.
Right? Like this just can't happen." And I think that United haven't done a good enough job managing that,
Yeah. I agree.
because it caused so many problems in dressing rooms with social media posts, and I understand that it's difficult to manage completely because it's not a Man United employee, but that stuff shouldn't be allowed. Um, on Garnacho, he missed another chance that I think he should be scoring. Now, James,
Mm.
he's a very talented young player. He done a lot of things right yesterday. I thought some of his deliveries were very, very good. But what we saw against Bournemouth, where United have either drawn or lost a close game, we've seen just so many times this season where these chances, if they're falling to any striker in the top five or six, they're taking these. And
Yep.
that game changes completely. Everything changes completely. That you can easily draw a very obvious causal line between these chances being missed and United not winning games of football.
Yep. Yeah, it's very direct, and you look at I was looking at the last 6 weeks in general, and I look at a lot of the games we played. 0-0 Arsenal, right? Or what was it, 1 to
Two
1
goals
or
in
something
five
like
games,
that.
James. Unbelievable.
Yeah,
Ridiculous.
yeah, and then 0-0 City. It wasn't what was 0-0 Arsenal, but it was, it was a low scoring draw. 0-0 City, 0-1 Wolves, 1-1 Bournemouth. It's all these really low scoring games that keep happening where United have had the chances to win time and time again. To have the chances to win, to easily put it away, chances that they should be scoring. Again, the third goal against Lyon, how does that change things?
Mhm.
Instead of the collapse that comes afterwards.
Yeah,
It
that's a
is
good
a
point. That
very,
happened
very
first.
direct
Mm.
line between those. You look at, there's a brilliant chance not taken, and the outcome is affected by that one chance. And it happens over and over every week. That's why it's like watching the same game on repeat. And I
Yeah.
said the other teams, one shot on target, they're taking them. And there's a point where it's not luck. It's just a matter of that's what teams with top forwards do. And it just so happens that there's a fairly good level of quality from forwards in the Premier League, especially in that top 8 with a lot of surprising teams in there. They've got good players. I mean, Wolves have won like 6 straight now. Cunha, who I'm sure we'll
Mm.
talk about in a minute here, gets a goal and 2 assists at the weekend. The quality of these forwards is exceptional, and the gap just looks bigger and bigger all the time. But these are chances. I think back to even like Solskjaer's year. I think it was the lockdown season. With Martial and Rashford and Greenwood at the time up front, and I think there's Cavani in at a backup. You watch those games, we're scoring those chances every time. We are taking and scoring. I think they scored like more goals than Liverpool's front three that season. I think it was. It was like they were the best scoring front three in the league. They were scoring those chances, and that was probably the last time we've seen consistently, not just one player, but as a unit, these chances get taken on the regular. Um, and it makes a huge difference. I mean, that team got second, and it climbs you up the table when you take your chances. And it's funny because it's like the same players, Maguire and Lindelof, were at the back. It's not like we had this insane, defensive unit and these insane players. It's a lot of, it's McFred and it was Maguire and it was Lindelof, and it's like, but we took our chances, and goals change games, and goals are worth. I think the biggest correlation in league position is goals scored. The team that scores more goals gets more points. I mean, that's pretty obvious, logically, but it is what it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, changes the whole dynamic, the pressure. I mean, you see Bruno Fernandes scores, at 4-2, 4-3, and
Yep.
then as a consequence of the momentum you get from that, the other two
Yep.
come easy.
Yep.
And so, there's a very clear, this is why, teams get relegated, is because they don't have top finishers,
Yep.
mainly.
Yep.
And with Hoyland yesterday, one of the things that I suppose did like about his goal, it was one of the first times I'd seen him go front post and get in front of the defender.
Yeah.
So many times the ball's coming across, he's wrong side, he's never first to the ball. And to me, there's balls being swung across the box, and the box, there's no striker. I'm like, I want to see you gamble, go front post, get in front of the defender.
Yeah.
And it paid off for him this time. Physicality, James. There was an obvious difference for me in physicality. Now, I was thinking about this yesterday. I was like, I remember Mourinho talking about this. And Mourinho in 2017 was like, we have to focus on the Europa League. The squad isn't, big enough to deal with the demands of the Premier League. We're not going to finish fourth. We're about sixth or something. So now I have to focus on the Europa League. I'm like, okay, this has been going on for a long time.
Yes.
Yep. Of all the things that are forgivable, physicality is probably the least. Yep. Because that's not complex. That's something that is a pretty obvious process to improve. You know how to get bigger. Solskjaer sent Van de Beek away to get bigger, right? You could see when Kabi Manu came back, he was bigger. Bizarrely, Bruno Fernandes is not. Some players don't need it.
Some players are just,
Yeah, but the physicality thing, James, that's, to me, begs a second question.
Yep.
Of all the things that are easy to perfect or easier, that's one of them. Why can you not get a squad in a professional football club at elite level to be physically capable of playing in the league they're saying to play in? That is, to me, like such an obvious, overt feeling. It requires an explanation.
Yeah, it is crazy to me. And it's obviously, I would 100% agree. To me, it's the biggest hole that United have, because we've seen it for such a long time. They lose the battles, they lose their duels, they're second to every ball. Whatever talent is in there, we see that all the time. I'm not picking on Garnacho here, but there was a moment in the game in the second half when Kirkez is running down the line and Garnacho's trying to defend him, and they're about the same height, and he just literally tosses him aside on the ball and then runs through two more players after that. And Kirkez is a very good young player, but I remember that exact moment watching him. Comes in to try to defend him. It's just one push, and he goes flying, and then he runs past two more players, and I'm like, what on earth, is this? But that's physicality. It's like that. We lose those battles, and I think Newcastle was a really good example of this, because they're a very physical team. That's one of the things they've done really well in their rebuild here. Their midfield is really strong, really physical, with Joelinton and Bruno Guimaraes and all of that, like really physical. And they just ran over United. And we look at games where we still have Ericsson in the midfield and things like this, and it's like, how do we get to that point, where you've got these talented
This
players,
is
but
the part I don't understand, James. Like, it's not that difficult to get
yeah,
someone in a certain. I mean, I know I bring this up probably most podcasts, but I look at something like boxing.
yeah,
They prepare fighters to fight at a weight class. And it's a very precise process of getting them to make weight, but getting them to have the right physicality to compete at this particular event against their opponent. It's a couple of month process. Not that difficult to do, right?
yeah,
Why can't United get players in a physical condition? I mean, Joe Linton's not exactly Alexander Usyk. Decent lad, bit of bulk. Not a Damatoriori. Bruno
yeah.
Guimaraes, regular guy, decent shape, but why are United players built like a Marlboro Light? Like, why
Yeah,
aren't they
I know.
being able to go out and compete physically? Like, why? That to me is not, that's a relatively easy thing to fix. And why is it always this way? I don't know. That to me, and by the way, I'm not blaming Amorim because obviously he didn't sign these players and he's
Yeah,
not responsible for the condition they're in, but he is the person that made the diagnosis. So I want to
yeah,
know why that is the case. Because if he said that to me, my first question, especially if I'm his boss or someone else, I'm like,
yeah,
you're telling me that this football club can't even manage to make the athletes, these professional athletes, to get in a physical condition to compete? Like, that is such a
yeah.
basic feeling. Like, forget about who you sign.
Yeah, it is
Forget
it is
about
weird.
this to me is like, why is this just why is this not being drilled down on further?
Yeah, for sure. It is a strange one, and I do think with the names that we're hearing this summer and all of that so far, that it sounds like it's going in the right direction towards at least trying to bring in players who they feel are physically up to it. I think, signing a few more from the Premier League this summer, like Cunha and like Delap, is good in that respect. That they
But
can
we just
handle
said
the
Joelinton and
physicality of the
Guimaraes.
league.
Neither of them came in the Premier League. Yeah,
Yeah, no,
I
I
know what
know.
you're saying, but they're
It's like
already that. I know
know
what you're
they're
saying.
ready. Yeah. So you at
Yes.
least know that, right? There's not going to be this runway to get them up to it, right? Because like we saw with Xerxes, right? Like there's a runway. There was a runway because he was certainly not there when he came in terms of being able to deal with the pace and the intensity of the league, and he improved as it went on.
Okay, that I can understand. A couple of months, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But for there's players that it never comes, and it's like it is odd in that respect. And I don't have the answer either, right? Because we've been through multiple managers like that. When Ali came in, he said he wanted the team to be more robust. Same thing. That was like one of his first comments about it was about that. And it's like it's been the comment of almost every manager that hasn't been solved. So I guess we'll find out if they actually solve it for once here. But
yeah, because
I don't know. It's been a long time like this.
I remember Ollie saying that he needed United to be the fittest team
Yeah.
in the league, and I mean, this is just something
I think Liverpool are, and that's probably why they win the league.
And the other part of that is the intensity aspect. We can deal with the intensity. Again, I'm asking why.
Yep.
Why can you not deal with intensity in the Premier League? Like, I understand maybe one or two of the older players, but Agarte, Yanni Euro, Dorgu, Dallo, Mazrui, Bruno Fernandes, Casemiro,
Yep.
Rasmus Højlund, Garnacho. Why can they not deal with the Premier League, the intensity? Like, most of these players are young, fit, and in their
Yeah.
prime. Like, that's a big concern to me. Like, that's kind of not an excuse to me. That's like a really bad admission. But anyway, we will talk about that to death. Give me get your opinions on young Dorgu so far.
I'm not sure. Like he's been here 5 minutes in that respect, and that's kind
Mm,
of the best thing I'd say. Like joining in January as a young player is probably the toughest thing to, gets a red card in that like second
mhm.
game, and then is out for a few more weeks. So he's played a couple of months. I think he's had the right ideas in terms of what he's trying to do, but it's not quite coming off. I think he's been, for the most part, better as a defender than he has been going forward, which has not necessarily solved United's problem because in the system you kind of need these wing backs to be pretty attacking and aggressive. I actually think he looked better when he played on the right against Wolves than he has in the other games. Unfortunately, and isn't that like the United curse of like looking, we buy a left back and then they look better on the right. But I will say,
Mhm.
like Harry Amos came in, I think he looked
Mm,
better than him on the left,
mm,
in those few appearances that he had, um, which is fine. I mean, Amos has been around the team a long time. He's young, but he's not that, he's a good player too. So it's one that give me time. He's been
mm,
loose. His touch has been a little sloppy. His passing's been a little
mm,
sloppy. But I will give him one thing. He's created a lot of chances still, even
mhm,
despite that. Even with some of the things he's doing that aren't coming off, he's getting the ball into the box, probably more than almost anybody but Bruno in getting
mm,
those crosses
mhm.
in, floating them in, getting them in the right spaces. So despite all of that, I see promise there, and that's encouraging to me.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I think when you're buying a player that young, they're not the finished article. You understand that. Secondly, you need only look at Patrice Evra when he joined in
Yeah.
January. The first, couple of months is hard. I mean, we've just talked about the adjustment to the Premier League with other players adjusting to the speed, the intensity,
Yep.
all the physical demands, but the mental stuff too. You're in a football club where it's not easy to excel because there's just so much talk going on around the football club. There's negativity and criticism. Um, he looks to me like technically he's not quite there yet.
Yeah.
Right foot bit ropey,
Yep.
not great in terms of shooting and stuff. But that to me is stuff that you can improve on, you can work
Yeah.
on. He's still young. There's so much upheaval. United's backline. He doesn't have a Marcus Rashford or someone on the left in the
Yeah.
same way that other United left wing backs had, where they had the front three. So you've
Yep.
basically got Garnacho in between, the striker. It's in that inverted winger role. So it's I don't think it's easy, and I agree with you in that he's made United more dangerous in that he's putting balls in the box that
Yeah.
United weren't getting
Yes.
before, and I think that he's an encouraging young signing. We'll see what happens with Diego Leon in the summer and Harry Amas if they can push him on.
Yep.
But nonetheless, I think United's options at left back are quite encouraging considering what
Yeah.
they've been for the last couple of
It's getting
years.
better.
So young kid, I think he'll develop. I think he'll improve. There's obvious things in his game that he'll need to work on, which is what you should expect at that age. But all in all, I think I'm quite encouraged by him, and I definitely think he was an important signing in January. Mason Mount, my friend,
I'm still waiting for
Mr.
that
D.
for him to do something, because it's like it is that same thing. Like it's so strange to me, and I'm not trying to be like overly optimistic with it because I'm not at all anymore. I think I lost the hope after Wolves after he missed the chances because I was like, if there's a moment to make your mark, that was it. Go in, the chances come, they fall to you, put them in the net, and he didn't, and he missed two. And I look at it and I'm like, I still see like when you watch him do a lot of the right things, but that's about all I can say. I think he's an intelligent footballer, but beyond that, ineffective and just has not really done anything, and
But
unfortunately is looking really
th-
poor.
there are people who know a lot more about football than me and know
Yeah.
how to see a good player from a bad one, and they rate him really highly.
Yeah.
I just haven't seen it at United,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. It just hasn't come off. I mean, it just hasn't. I mean,
yeah, maybe should have scored yesterday against Bournemouth, but not. You can see where it's not a hang on offense. It's got a deflection and
yeah.
gone away, but it's the aggregate of everything else that comes
Yeah.
before it
Yeah.
that then makes that a bit more unpalatable because it's just an accumulation
Yep.
of stuff. Let me ask you about some of the changes that are happening at United right now. Of course, they have changed. They're overhauling the scouting department. The minute Steve Brown is going to move on, and maybe this answers some of the questions regarding Amarim talking about United's physicality and intensity. Steve Brown obviously came in. He was part of the John Murtagh team. He was heavily involved with recruitment with Ten Hag. Um, and I don't know if there's something related to that. I mean, to me, Ten Hag United this summer focused on physicality with Delict, Lenny Euro, Xerxes, big tall lads. Um,
Ugarte, yeah.
yeah, and
Mazraoui, yeah.
yeah, and so I think it's
There's a
right.
shift a little bit, I think, yeah.
Yeah, but I also think it's right for United to streamline certain
Yeah.
roles within the football club. When you have so many people like that, you get bottlenecks, you get friction,
Yeah.
and you lose efficiency because it just takes too long to make a decision.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there's just too many people, and so you will have to streamline it. And I think that, when you talk about layoffs and stuff, this type of layoff I have no issue with.
Yeah. Yeah, well, look, I mean, more is not always better in things like this, right? I mean, we used to boast about having the largest scouting department in the world, but our transfer still sucked. So
Mm.
it's like, it doesn't necessarily
Yeah.
mean better. You look at things like Madrid, they've got one guy who gets all the top talents from Brazil. It doesn't take a giant team. It's the right guy with the right connections, with the right eyes, and he's able to make quick decisions about the things he sees, that Calafat guy that they have in for Brazil, I think it is, right? And and I think that they setting up something a little bit similar to that, where you've got, Vivel, who kind of obviously has these connections. We look at signings like, this kid Enzo, this young French
Yeah, yeah.
striker,
Right, yeah.
French Cameroonian striker, and it's things like that. The Lyons, the Cones, these types of things where you've got a guy who specializes in doing those things, and because it's him and his like team and his connections, it can be fast. You can get the jump on them. You can make the call. You can say, okay, he wants that guy. Let's get that guy. You don't need 120 people to look for the best player in the Premier League to sign. You don't need it. It doesn't matter. You need a focused team and all of that. And so it definitely seems like an area that just got bloated. And as we know, the footballing area of the club was just never organized the way that it should have been under the Glazers. They just never did it. It was never done. It was never a priority.
Mhm.
So I think it's fair enough that with Steve Brown leaving, it probably makes the last name, I say like named person, like person whose name we heard before many times, probably from the football recruitment team is gone. There was Murtaugh, there was, Steve Brown, and there was,
Phil Brown.
obviously, right, yeah, that guy. No, but obviously there was a few other guys that have left. There was the data guy. There was the other thing.
Mm.
Regardless, one way or another, everybody kind of, I guess, I wouldn't even say responsible. Like, I'm not trying to pin it on a person, but everybody who was a part of what they felt was a failed setup is gone and replaced, and that's normal with anything, right? But it just kind of makes sense. Now, it was interesting, I believe, based on what Laurie put in his article, that he was offered an alternative role. So it wasn't like you're shit, you're an ass, we don't like you, you're to blame for everything, but just you're not going to be in the same position you were in before. And obviously, he felt it would be better to move on
And I think that's the
to a
right thing
different
to do,
job.
James. I
Yeah,
think that
yeah,
I'm completely on board with,
yeah,
because company has to do that. To me, if you're a big company, you need to be freshening up about 10% of
yeah,
your staff every
yeah,
year. Because you need to bring
yes,
fresh perspective. You need to bring, it's just like a football team. You need to bring new impetus, new
yeah, yeah,
dynamics, new humans. You need to bring new ideas. One of United's biggest issues is that they haven't moved with the times, is that
yeah,
they are still using people from
yes,
an era that is gone. And one thing about Vivel, he's obviously had his job made permanent. He understands the European football market, the
yeah,
global football market, considering, his background, and has an exceptional knowledge of, youth levels in
yes,
all around the world and
yes,
contexts. And, like the Real Madrid, players come to Real Madrid, right? So they're trying to get to you. You're not trying to get to them.
yeah, yeah,
But you need to have things like Y Scouts. They have their own bespoke, scout data analyst network. I
yeah,
mean, I remember Ed Woodward saying there was a list of 800 players for the right back position that Wan-Bissaka ended up being the number one on that list. I remember asking United if someone at United if that list was being read upside down.
He was okay, but yeah, I don't know about first on
No,
100,
not really.
800 names.
Yeah, but no,
But
no.
no, look, I
Listen,
mean, you're right. Sir Alex, as a coach, used to refresh his coaching staff all the time for this reason. He said that himself, I think. He wanted new ideas, new people coming in to give him on football and tactics, on to change with times, to evolve, and to always be present. And I think that's vital.
James, people don't say this a lot, but I think Steve McLaren coming in as Ferguson's number two was a key part of
Yeah.
United winning the 99. Steve McLaren brought a lot of new age ideas for the
Yeah.
time to United.
Sure.
People laugh at Sam Allardyce. Sam Allardyce was coming out to America, looking at NFL strategies
Yeah.
way before anyone else was. Sam Allardyce
Yeah.
is a really, really progressive manager. Like, you get this,
Yeah.
he understands how to play the strengths, but in any game, you have to keep updating, you have to keep moving,
Yeah.
you
Yes.
can't stand still. And United are, I think this is correct. Cunha, of course, as we know, is someone that United are pursuing with gusto. It looks like that deal probably will happen. What price
Yes.
it happens at, I don't know. But it does appear that United are moving on these players early. I think that pretty good season for Wolves. I think the last time I looked about a week ago, he'd scored 14 Premier League goals or something.
16 now, I think, and 6 assists. Is really good numbers, and he was suspended for 3-4 games as well. So he's actually got some really good numbers. And one of the things that impressed me when I looked into him, because obviously a goal scoring forward is a huge priority, but in addition to that, compared to the amount of the ball Wolves have, compared to these kinds of things, he's done exceptionally well. He also creates chances at a really high level. He's one of the better chance creators in England as well, in terms of creating for others too. So I expect to have a big impact. The more I think about him, and I've watched him personality wise and such, I think him and Bruno make a really, really complementary pair of people in how they approach the game, how they play it, the wanting to take the responsibility on their back, things like that. The way that I've watched him do for Wolves and such. So that one I think is quite an exciting one to me. That probably will end up being our best transfer this summer, in my opinion.
So what happens if he looks like Barry Bannon after 2 weeks?
I mean, it's crazy that we can even consider that, right? But I will say this. For transfers in the Premier League, one of the reasons I like them is I do think you get what you buy. Like, it's kind of crazy. Like, we bought Mason Mount injured. He'd been out for the whole season, so we got that. It's like, it wasn't like he had this sudden thing. We should have seen it. He was out for the whole season, and we explained it away, and yada yada. But it's like Harry Maguire. We got the same player we bought. Whether we paid too much at the time, overpaid, that's a different discussion, because that's about negotiations, right? But we did get the player we paid for. He was basically the same guy at Leicester as he was when he joined United. Alexis Sanchez was on the serious decline. If you ask any Arsenal fan, by the time we signed him, it wasn't really a surprise, except fooling ourselves, about the individual we're signing. I think with Cunha, we'll get what we pay for, and it looked about the same as he did there. I haven't seen that many surprises from a Premier League level of transfers.
You know what surprises me, James? Like, this is where I get a bit confused, because we talk a lot about the negativity and the atmosphere inside the football club. And if it was that bad, surely the likes of Casemiro would be sitting to Cunha going, "Do not come here."
I thought about that the other day.
Do not come here. Like, whatever you do, this is
stay away.
Yeah, this is a Bermuda Triangle. Don't come here. And he's going to have options.
Or Fred, who's been here as a Brazilian. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sitting there looking at Mazraoui, De Ligt, and I'm going, if it's that bad for Ten Hag, and why are they coming? Like, I don't understand. Like,
it is an odd one, isn't it? Yeah. It can't be, and at least balance with the fact that United still has weight. But I think what's more telling, based on last summer and this one, is we're not handing out massive contracts anymore either. Because you could pass it off as people coming for the money in times in the past, throwing money at things and hoping. But the players that came in last year came in all on very reasonable wages for a first team signing. And Cunha, I believe, will be coming on very reasonable wages as well. So it's not about the money. United still have the draw. I think that, maybe there's importance in some of the things, like, not to give too much credit here, but maybe there's a little bit of importance in putting things like showing the stadium project, stuff like that. When it happens, how it happens, fine. But at least showing the intent of it to build this, cathedral in the UK and stuff like that can be interesting to players, and keep United's name in that relevancy. But I do agree with you. And it's not just that. It's like, there's people who, it's like, it's the same thing with Casemiro. It's not just telling new signings. It's the fact that he wants to stay. And that, Varane, you say, he's posting about United still when he's done. And it's like, Mata is still doing work for United. You know, he was doing ambassador stuff over in California last summer
Yeah,
or
because
something,
I
right?
mean,
In
Lenny
San Diego.
Euro, if Varane's leave Lenny Euro, he would be on the phone to Euro, like, you know,
Yeah.
come here, go
Yeah.
Real Madrid, United want you. I've been at both clubs. Go to Real. Go. I
But he
mean,
comes
yeah.
to United. Yeah. It's like, and Varane made the choice to go to Madrid when he was young too. So it's like it's kind of funny in that
And
respect.
since Varane's finished his career, I've seen him talk about Real Madrid maybe once, United about
Yeah.
7 or 8 times, and I'm
It's
going.
so strange. It's
I,
so
I think that
strange.
what happens is they get a very special relationship with the fans and stuff, James,
Yeah.
because you know Real Madrid, massive football club,
Mm.
but you can have 1,000 good games, one bad game,
It's
and
harsh, isn't it? Yeah.
they're getting the white
Really
hankies out
harsh.
quicker than a teenager in his bedroom, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is I'm like, these people's not embarrassed. Like this guy, I mean, this
Yeah.
guy got 1,000 goals in 10 games, and then he misses a free kick, and they're wanting him, hung. I'm like,
They're gonna boo Mbappe already. He's just got there.
yeah,
They wanted him for 5 years. I know it's interesting now. There is a different relationship with the fans in England, and United than there is in Spain, and I think that does matter.
yeah. Anyone else on the shopping list? I know you needed looking at a number of players. I know Xavi Simons is someone obviously Vivell knows quite well.
Yeah.
Um, what else are you hearing?
Well, I mean, obviously, their plan A is like Cunha and Delap.
Yeah.
Without Europe, that's the good part. The money is there. They don't need Europe. They don't need sales to get those deals done, so it makes sense. Um, Beyond that, obviously, we're going to have to make some sales or get into Champions League to afford more signings. But two that stand out to me that I think I've been talking about for a long time, but that in the last week there's been something on is young Franco Mastantuono, this
Oh
young
yeah,
player
it's
from Argentina.
River
Looks like
17.
it looks like just an absolutely incredible talent. Like really, really,
What a
really
beautiful goal
top.
yesterday against Boca. Yeah.
Yes, really good. Really good player, really good young player. And yeah, so he is interesting. Now he's not 18 even until August. And I think their directors today said he's staying the whole year no matter what. Obviously, their seasons run different to ours. So I would imagine it's more one maybe they look at like in January or he's a young player. So it's maybe for the future, but they've definitely been looking at him, definitely interested in him. And things can change. They can say he'll stay for the year and then come August, you trigger the release clause. There's nothing you can do about it because it's a release clause, right? So things like that can happen. And then Ederson for the midfield, the Atalanta midfielder, another Brazilian.
John
Again,
Murder, who's now there.
yeah, right. We'll see. But yeah, another player when I think about this focus on physicality fits it to a T. He's a really, really top athlete, physical player in that midfield. Gets around really, really well, finds his way into the attack, adds some goals from the midfield. I think he makes a really strong case in terms of the addition to this kind of midfield we've set up as well. So I like him, but obviously it's about the money too. If they can find the money. But those I would say are two other really strong targets that if they can swing it, they'd like to bring in.
So let's say you bring in these forwards. We talk about what will happen to Hoyland and stuff. What about Chidi Obi? What happens there? Because I thought when he come on yesterday, I thought he played quite well, and I can see a kid that's just starting to become more and more comfortable with playing at this level. And with each important performance, he's
Yep.
improving and improving. In fact, he almost scored yesterday, and that would have been one of the highlights of the season. And it would have meant that he would have been under enormous focus now and attention. It would have made a lot of headlines. It's always disappointing we don't have him for the Europa League, but what happens there with him? Do we loan him
Yeah,
out or what?
well, it's an interesting one there because so like there's this young kid Enzo who apparently they'll loan off to Lawson, and it sounds like that'll get done at some point. And I think that's nice, getting another young player in,
Yes.
out on loan, seeing how they develop because you never know with young players what's going to happen. But with Cheeto, I think I guess to me it's more a question of for Rasmus Højlund here than it is for Cheeto because I think Cheeto's going to continue to get chances at United. That's why they signed him. That's why he joined from Arsenal's on that basis that there is a pathway to him into the first team. He will not. I don't think there's any chance in hell he gets loaned out because again, that's not why he joined United. The whole discussion was very different to that. I think it's more a question of you'd have him and Højlund competing, for the second place Who's doing better is going to get more minutes if Hoyland stays this summer. But I think they'd be willing to move him on as well if they could. I think getting the money for him would be near impossible. But I mean, David Ornstein in his little Q&A thing last week said the same thing, that he would be someone they'd be open to sending. I wouldn't be opposed to Hoyland going on loan for a year, because I
I was
don't think
going
you
to
can
say
get the money. But I think at United, his value is probably, it's going to be hard for it not to diminish. But if he goes on loan, and I know that's a funny joke because you mentioned John Murta at Atlanta, but if you want to send him back to Atlanta on loan over there to play for a season in Italy, it could probably help him, frankly, and I think it would. And that would be my inclination. I think that's probably something on the table, not Atalanta specifically, but to
Yeah, I
loan
know.
him out.
I agree
And
with you 100%,
yeah,
because I
to
think
do that.
Hoyland's a better player than the one we're seeing.
Yeah,
And I
he
think
is. He is. Yeah.
when you look at the success of the Rashford and Anthony loans,
Mm.
their value has increased since they've
Yes.
gone out, right?
Yes.
United are not going to get 50 million for Rasmus Hoyland in the summer.
No
But
way.
Rasmus Hoyland is still a very young striker. And if he
Yep.
was to go out even to a mid-table Premier League team and hit 15, 20 goals, you will have clubs lining up hand over fist 12 months from now to hand you that type of money, or you can bring him back. But this, to me, would not be a good time to try to sell Hoyland on the market.
No.
Football's just good. The
Be the
thing is,
worst time to do it, frankly.
yeah, I mean, you look at all these
Yeah.
sporting directors at clubs, right? Just like everyone else, their job's on the line. So they want to minimize risk. You would have an enormous set of balls on you if you're a sporting director to walk into the owner or whatever is your football club and say, boss, I've decided that Rasmus Hoyland is the guy we should go for.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
you have to have a
Yeah.
huge. Now,
You're
if you
gonna
can get
have
him
trouble
on loan,
convincing anybody of that.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can get him on loan, okay. But if he does what Jadon Sancho does and goes on loan to a Premier League club and has a bad year, he's at a really difficult moment in his career where it's like,
Yeah.
I have to leave England. Jadon
Yeah.
Sancho has to do that. In my opinion, even if Chelsea do activate that clause,
They're gonna move him to Dortmund.
I think he should. Right?
Yeah.
I think
And it
that,
would be right for him. Yeah.
yeah, 100%, James.
Yeah.
It's so to me, Hoyland's in that awkward moment where he has to play next season.
Yep.
He has to have a good season. And for United, he's more valuable to them 16 months from now, having had a good season,
Yes.
than selling him right now.
I totally agreed, and I think that's it. Essentially, it does what United should be doing in terms of forward thinking. You get Cheeto developing at the club. You get Hoyland on loan elsewhere. You have Enzo on loan elsewhere. Now you've got 3 young players in different situations to see how they get on. And what all you need is one to work, right? You need just one
Yep.
of those 3, and that's what a lot of clubs have done successfully to build over the years. And I think that's the right plan for United, to then have that guy. And worst case, Hoyland works out, but you don't think he's good enough for United, you could probably sell him at that point in time for 25, 30, and you're good. You can, you're even on the whole deal. If Enzo works out okay, you got him on a free, you sell him on. If Cheeto works out great, you've got him in the club to work. So I think that would be the right approach. And I think that type of scenario is very much on the table. I mean, we've seen it. They've been quick to move players, out now, like we saw with the loans in January, like we saw even last year with like Willie Kambuala, Alvaro Fernandez, and these players, moving them with sell-ons, with things like that. So I think they're open to saying, hey, go somewhere else, play, do something. We'll see what happens in the future, rather than stagnating. And I think we talked about that on the last show, that was one of my biggest complaints, is how long it takes United to move players on when they should. And then their value just gets worse and worse and worse and worse, and it tanks. And so I think that would be very much on the table with this summer.
Should United agree to another loan deal for Anthony?
I think they're going to have to, because based on the transfer fee, you have the same issue here where they're going to have to pay 30-something million, and those clubs like Betis don't really pay those kind of transfer fees ever. I
Could
don't
they
know.
get someone else to pay? I mean, to me, James, he's had such a
You
decent.
feel like you could, right, in Spain?
Yeah. Now, if I'm a sporting director in Spain, we could get Anthony for 30 million. Still young. Had a disappointing time at United. Okay, we can explain that away. He's come to Spain. He's been exceptional.
Yeah,
that's a 60 million pound footballer like a Nico Williams a
probably.
year from
Yeah,
now if he continues to develop. I mean, you've seen players like Mo Salah and all that go to the Premier League, then have to leave and go to Roma and stuff and come back
yeah,
and develop and come at the right stage. I'm not saying that that's going to be Anthony, but
yeah.
I'm saying that look, for him, you know, for United, I think that if Bettis don't pay it, they should be able to get at least that for him in the market, in my opinion.
I
I
think
mean,
they
not
should.
able to keep
Yeah,
him.
yeah. Obviously, I think they should look for it, right? Because they need enough to get his transfer fee paid off, and that's it, right? And that way you wipe the amortization off. It saves the club a lot more money than just a loan. If not, though, I would definitely not accept a straight loan. I would do it do a loan and an obligation at a lower fee, so that you get everything covered for the year. You get a bit of a loan fee, and then the obligation gets triggered next summer. The amortization is lower. The club pays maybe 20 million next summer, and you get to wipe it off then, and you kind of know it's taken care of. A straight loan, I think, would be fairly foolish because anything could happen, with a player like that, and you can end up stuck with the problem in the future. But
Well, let me ask
if
you
you
one other
sell
answer with
loan
him.
yeah, yeah, go ahead.
What if he stays?
I don't think he will. I don't think it's possible. Honestly, because I think based on the comments that Amram's made, as well as a few other things, it's more a matter of he really. I don't think his performance in Spain is going to convince them that he's going to work for this United team. Basically,
Yeah.
um, that would be my thought on it. As opposed
Mhm.
to, I know there's other factors in this, but as opposed to Rashford, who's performing in England, it's still this. The comments on physicality, I think, will still be the limiting factor there, and there still be the belief that he just doesn't that Anthony doesn't have it to play in England. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I think about that, James. I'm like, okay, physicality can be worked on. He could be a better player coming back from the spell away. That I'm not saying that you keep him. Just if I was
Yeah.
trying to steel man an argument to keep him and consider it, there's that. There's the fact that look, United might not be able to get all their targets this summer. They're
Yeah.
still really short on depth and quality up front. So this is to an interview with Robert Huth there a while ago talking about when Mourinho came into Chelsea in high competitive training sessions were because the squad was so deep with so much quality. United don't have that
Mm,
competitive training, and you see it on the pitch. They badly need squad depth. And you know, one thing I will say about Anthony, where he was being smart, where Jadon Sancho wasn't, he's been very respectful when asked about United since he's been away.
yeah.
So that
Yeah.
option for him to come
Yeah.
back is still there.
I would say this. I think that Anthony to come back wouldn't be a forward. He would be a wing back. And I actually
Mm.
think in the couple little games he played under Amarim, he looked better in that position than he did otherwise because he's always been very good with his defensive work rate. And I think that's an important factor in a wing back. He does work hard on running back, on tackles, on those types of things. Um, uh,
I think there was a
you
time
know,
when he originated on how many
yeah.
presses and winning the ball back and
Yeah,
presses last season,
yeah,
didn't
yeah. No, he was good. He was a good, look, the problem with Anthony is always on top of that is the fee. And I think that's where you still have to look to move him on if you can, because the amount he's costing you per season on amortization is like you could buy an 80 million player. So if you can wipe that somehow, you can go reinvest better than what you would have by keeping him, right? For sure. I think that would be the view. That's the problem with paying those giant fees, obviously, is that like if it's 30 million, you probably have a totally different outlook and conversation on him in that respect. But so yeah, in that respect though, like I think his time has been really poor at United. But if it was like just a dry loan, I would be even slightly inclined to
it?
keeping him in that case from a footballing standpoint, because it's like, what's the point of that? Just
Yeah.
another loan like that is silly.
I think if you had a loan option with a mandatory buy option that didn't
Yeah,
have a five
that's
million pound penalty, uh,
a what?
yeah, to get out, I think that might
Yes.
be okay.
Yeah.
Uh, I we know the days of these long or these big fees are
Yeah.
probably over in that sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's that threshold that we were talking about of players now not getting 3, 4, 5 years at United
Yeah.
is exactly where it should be. If by the
Yeah.
second year you haven't shown you deserve to be at this football club, I mean Real Madrid. Now, when you get to the top, that that window gets shorter and shorter.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But and then lastly, it leaves you a question mark of a goalkeeper.
Yeah, it does, and it's been a mixed bag, obviously, on the reports that we've seen. I know that United were looking at the start of the season, we're looking at competition, and there was a point where Bayindir seemed very sure to go. He didn't play like a minute, under Ten Hag for whatever reason. Um, he still might, and United didn't pay a lot for him, so if they sell him for a few million, they could easily go get another keeper, at minimum to compete. I think their main thing is they really hope to not have to spend a ton of money on a keeper this summer, because you're still paying a lot for Onana, so unless Saudi are coming in with a big bid, it feels like the best bet is getting competition, some a keeper to come in for competition this summer, because otherwise it seems fairly unshiftable.
All right, but man, quick prediction, of course, Bilbao away. Bilbao will be, in my opinion, this next game will probably be the hardest game United
Yep,
have left in the
yep,
company. I think they'll be better
for
at home,
sure.
obviously.
Yep.
And not being disrespectful to Bodo Glimt or Spurs. I don't think Spurs have the mentality
Mhm.
to win a final.
Yeah,
Have the experience, the team to win a final. I think United would beat them in a final. Maybe
I think so too.
shouldn't think
I
that.
know, I know, I know, but it
Bodo,
is
like they just like
Spurs.
Bodo or just playing with house money at this point. Jesus,
Yeah,
unbelievable. I mean,
and we
it's
beat
funny.
them already, Bodo Glimt, right, in
Yeah,
the group, so
Spurs problems to me are so obvious, right? But I'm sure that United's problems seem so obvious to people when you're not a fan and you can look at it
yeah.
from a different perspective. It's amazing to me how similar Spurs and United are.
Yeah, it is kind of funny in how it's going, especially this season being so low on the
Mm.
table and all of these things. It's kind of wild. But for Thursday, I'm with you. Like I think if we leave there with a draw or a lead, we'll get through.
Oh,
Um, yeah,
amazing.
I think if we leave there with a draw or a lead, we get through. They're a very strong defensive team that's going to sit deep, and so I kind of look at it like the what was it? The Forest game. We
Mm.
cannot give them those opportunities, on the break. We have to be strong in that respect, but we're gonna have to score some goals in the box. And quite honestly, I think it's gonna be another game. We'll see if we're gonna win. We're gonna see a center back scoring a goal off a set piece or something like that because that's our most predictable route through those crowded boxes. And to be fair, it's where I think we do have a physicality advantage. Maguire, Euro, these are big guys that tend to win those battles in the box. And so I think we're going to need something like that to get through.
And maybe that Rasmus Højlund goal, James, right at the
Maybe.
end of Bournemouth, may end up having a big impact
I
on
hope so.
Dubai.
I
Because
hope so.
sometimes something stupid like that, James, is what
Yep.
you need. I really hope it does. I
Yep.
really hope that.
And by the second leg, hopefully Ahmad is back. By the way, because he
Yeah,
should be
it's
back
good
in
to
training
see.
today. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to see that he's close. United definitely miss him quite a bit. We will see what happens. Thanks to all of you for downloading the podcast. I did not last Monday. I couldn't upload the podcast on my end for one reason, James, and I'll be totally honest. When we were talking about Mazarui and Lindelof, I didn't know what had
Oh, I,
happened.
I get you. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. I
when we
recall.
were
I
talking
recall.
about, my God, this seems ridiculous, stupid joke. And when I heard about what happened afterwards with the kids, I was really uncomfortable
Yeah,
with
I get you.
even it wasn't anything that bad, but it was just a stupid joke. And I looked at it and I tried to edit that clip out,
Mm.
and it kept corrupting the file for some reason, so I couldn't get it up. But I can get it up everywhere else. I will have a podcast up here in a minute. Thanks to all of you for downloading this as usual. And we will be back next week. Take it easy, mate.
See you later, buddy.
Bye.